Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and today I wanted to show you and talk about my low-life Detonate Dead character that I've been playing for the past few days. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Detonate Dead, essentially it is just a spell that has one front-loaded explosion just with flat amount of damage, and then a secondary explosion based off of the corpse that you explode and its maximum life percentage. So it is indeed a skill that requires 2 casts to get off, or at least a corpse to detonate off of, because without a corpse you cannot cast your Detonate Dead, and then you will not be able to use your actual skill. So we achieve the corpse through using a Desecrate, which spawns a bunch of corpses. That's all the green shit you see on the ground that I quite often cast before a pack, or Unearth Totem, which is going to be Unearth attached to a totem that just constantly spawns extra little corpses happening. But for the most part, we are relying on Desecrate for all of our explosions, and quite a lot of the time I'm also just using Orb of Storms, which paired with Herald of Thunder is enough to at least kill the first monster or two of a pack, and then I don't have to worry about desecrating and simply just dive in, Orb of Storms, and then start casting Detonate Deads. Now, because it has a 2-step process quite a lot of the time, that is charging near or into a pack, dropping a Desecrate, and then a Detonate Dead, it does look a bit slower than some other builds, and it is in that sense similar to an Essence Drain. So Essence Drain, you very commonly would have to cast a Contagion first, then an Essence Drain, and then you watch the cascade happen, and it is, in the long run, pretty damn fast and pretty damn efficient. But from the outside perspective, it does look kind of slow. Now, that said, this build can potentially look kind of slow sometimes as well, because of the wind-up of having to drop the corpses. There's a slight delay there, so you're not just ballsing into every pack and destroying everything. That said though, it is still fairly efficient and fast. It might look sort of slow, but playing it has been an absolute beauty, and I have enjoyed quite a lot of it. Of course, sometimes it does feel a little clunky, and not having a corpse is kind of shit at times, but it's just visually, with the new update, very spectacular, and on top of that, it's just been satisfying to have these big explosions with fairly large area, taking out, as you can see, breaches, abyss monsters, and bosses and the like. So the damage is fairly crazy, and overall it has been a fairly nice experience to play. But much like an Essence Drain, it really isn't for everyone, and a lot of people just will not like playing this. But for me personally, it has been a very engaging playstyle, because there is quite a lot to do and quite a lot of right or wrong moves to make as you dive into a pack to, you know, drop your Orb of Storms or your Desecrate, detonate the right things, keep up flasks, and as well as that, being low life and having no leech, being purely regen based, it is kind of tough to survive at times. So it is up to you to do that as well. It hasn't really been a big problem. You know, I don't die very often. It is just kind of a clench fest at times with what you can and can't achieve as far as phase tanking goes. Now, I don't have much in the way of boss clips. This is the best I can do so far, since I haven't really tackled too much endgame content. Just up to tier 14 maps and a few white tier Elder runs. Unfortunately, that's the best I could proc so far, thanks to the shitty system. But yeah, you can see we destroy these quite handily. The damage is fairly outrageous, just off of pure Detonate Dead. Have not felt the need to resort to Volatile Dead or Cremation yet, though I definitely have those in the back pocket if I think I need to. Because for the most part, everyone told me I will be using Cremation or Volatile Dead for single target, and Detonate Dead itself isn't that great for it. From my experience so far, it has been more than adequate, and simply with a Desecrate and an Unearth Totem, which I haven't got yet in these clips, the damage just ends up steamrolling every boss I've so far come across on a 5-link with fairly decent damage orientation. So I do still have a few things left to go to up my damage, but for the most part, it's what it needs to be, and it is, I think, fairly crazy. And of course, Cremation or Volatile Dead may be better. That doesn't really bother me, doesn't concern me. I play a skill if it's good enough to its fullest without having to resort to others first. So Detonate Dead was the goal of the build, and I wanted to try low life just to get a low life or an ES character into the league, which ends up being okay, but as I'll talk about in the next few minutes, it's not really the right choice. It might be, but as far as I can tell, you don't really gain much from low life. So the character here is an Inquisitor. It is level 88 at the moment, and it has about 7.5 KES, which is roughly as much as I could possibly do without losing a shitload of damage. So it's nowhere near the amount of energy shield you used to be able to get as low life, but 7.5 with my somewhat modest gear, I'd say, isn't too bad. It's just probably about as much as you could really get. I think 8k is probably roughly where you can sit if you're really trying to min-max some ES, which is a bit of a shame, but you know, it has been okay for everything up till tier 14 so far, and we'll see how it goes otherwise. Now, I do want to show you real quick my path of building damage. It's at 880k over here with Detonate Dead, and that's just on a 5 link with you know, the usual stuff ticked. That is against Shaper. That is the spell portion because it does have a initial hit and then a corpse explosion portion, which currently hits for almost 200k. So we're looking at about 1 million damage per hit, and that's with the low life version. And the entire point of going low life is to utilize this over here, pay an attunement for 30% more damage when on low life. And it hasn't really worked out, I don't think, terribly well, because when we look at, if we incorporate my tree, my passives, basically into a pure life build, so just go over here, and this isn't, you know, all optimized gear, so the life, don't worry about that. Basically, the damage looks roughly the same wearing a +1 tabula, which is quite likely what I would do anyway, because it's just a very solid choice. For a chest or a +1 Shaper chest or Elder chest, I think, Shaper maybe. And you know, if you do that, you'll probably achieve higher numbers than the low life version without having any of the headache of the low life build without any leech, based off of pure energy shield. So I'm not sure it's the right move, but currently it is a low life build. You can do the life version, I think, as well, and I'll give you guys what a provisional tree is for that. You just have to actually put, you know, real life gear instead of energy shield gear into the build, and then it'll probably play out roughly the same, but you'll have a life flask, maybe some leech incorporated as well. But for now, let's focus on the low life version that I've built and see exactly what's going on there. So I'm running a catalyst. I do have a shavs and nothing else too insane aside from that. I've crafted most of my energy shield gear with just maybe some chaos, some essences, that sort of stuff. So energy shield numbers are down across the board, so nothing looks that special anymore. I have bought a few of the items myself as well, specifically the base of this, Detonate Dead, has a 45% chance to detonate an additional corpse, so that is a fairly nice DPS boost if you can maintain your corpses. And I guess we should talk about Detonate Dead to start with here. So Detonate Dead, 800 to 1200 initial fire damage, which is pretty goddamn big, and then explosion dealing fire base equal to 6% of the corpse's maximum life. Now, the initial hit gets scaled by everything, so spell damage, fire damage, elemental damage. The secondary explosion only gets scaled by elemental and fire, because it's not technically a spell portion. It is a additional secondary fire explosion. So what happens is you drop your Desecrate. Now, Desecrate is a skill that grants, where are we? 5 corpses per use, and it has a maximum of 15 corpses you can spawn. Attach it to Spell Cascade, and in one cast you drop 15 corpses. So that means you can then go ahead and explode all of those corpses pretty damn quickly, especially if you have Spell Echo, which I've been running quite a lot of the time, and then the Helm Enchant. And on top of that, we can have an Unearth Totem, as I mentioned. So Unearth attached to GMP and Spell Totem. So you place that near a boss, and it's going to just keep firing corpses, meaning when you run out of corpses from your Desecrate, the Unearth will also supplement that, and you don't have to keep refreshing corpses with your Desecrate. You can, for the most part, just stand still and go ham with your Detonate Dead. Now, once you know the basics around Detonate Dead and Desecrate and all that, it becomes a pretty stock standard sort of spellcaster build, just an Inquisitor, getting all the crit and sort of damage nodes and then energy shield and area throughout the tree, trying to be as efficient as possible, getting dual sockets for bit of ES and crit multi, so you're trying to scale a lot of crit multi. You do have the 100% you know, ignore resists rather than penetration, ignore resists of the Inquisitor, and then we're running Pious Path, which is insanely good for low life. Basically, you will not feel very good in your low life character until you have Pious Path. So if you're going to copy any sort of energy shield builds as an Inquisitor, You do need this pretty damn early on to feel good about the character, because it is a lot of mana regen and a lot of energy shield regen when you're on consecrated ground, which is going to be almost always thanks to Sanctify and thanks to your Sorrow of the Divine. So when we pop that, we have way more energy shield regen, 970, and way more mana, and that is pretty much how you maintain your survivability as a low life build like this, because there's no leech, and besides that I am running a Temp Chains Blasphemy for defense on my mana, and as well as that a Herald of Thunder and a Discipline on life. So that's how you get to low life. You reserve Discipline with your Blood Magic support. And I was also going to shove a Clarity on there, but I've kind of run out of gem slots to really do anything, because I've got to fit in the Desecrate, the Unearth, the Orb of Storms, a Golem. There's a lot you got to fit in, and ultimately I can't really waste too many sockets. So I don't have a Clarity right now because I don't really need it, thanks to Consecrated Ground giving us all of our mana regen, and that has just been taking care of it just fine. But you can definitely run Clarity even instead of Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder is not super important, it just smoothens out my gameplay on the lower tier maps, where I quite often don't have to cast Desecrate at all, because thanks to Herald of Thunder plus Orb of Storms, I can quite often just kill things without needing to cast a Desecrate. And speaking of Orb of Storms, mine is in a 6-link over here with Blind and Faster Casting, so it is a bit smoother just for the Orb of Storms to be placed all of the time. But he's otherwise attached to Power Charge on crit, Crit Strikes, and Arcane Surge. So it gives us a lot of utility, and it's very useful in the build. It is, just like I said, a fairly engaging playstyle, having to drop Desecrates, having to drop Orb of Storms, and then going off with your Detonate Dead, while also positioning correctly, while making sure you're pressing your flasks at the right times and all of that. It's fairly engaging, and I'd say kind of a tough playstyle, definitely not for the light of heart. But yeah, you don't have to use a Herald of Thunder. Could use just about anything to reserve mana over here, even Arctic Armor. But I do think Temp Chains Blasphemy is fairly useful for this sort of setup, because you really do need the extra time to get all your spells off, and the damage is absolutely absurd, so it's not like you need to reserve with any sort of different damage spell like an Anger. Now lastly, I'll just go over my link setup here. Now that is Detonate Dead, Increase Crit Strikes, and then Controlled Destruction. That's my base 3-link, I would say. After that, I leveled a lot with Spell Cascade, because it feels really good just to be able to kill 3 corpses at once, like so. But in the end, it just doesn't feel necessary when I'm one-shotting things, so Spell Cascade just didn't feel right. Eventually, I replaced it with, let's say, Increased Area, so I could one-shot things in a bigger radius, and then Echo, because it's quite quality of life for rares and bosses and all of that. But a lot of the time I don't need Echo even during actual clear, and you can run around with, like, let's say, an Added Lightning, a Faster Casting, a Elemental Focus, a chance to ignite, just about anything, and just go off and kill one at a time, and that'll blow up just about everything in that radius. But I have still been playing with Echo. I think it's for the most part worth it. And then when you're ready for single target, chuck in a Conk Effect over your area, and all of a sudden you deal quite a lot of damage. And then the 6th link is Ellie Focus, which is huge extra damage. And just to give you guys the example, over here we have 878,000 damage, and Detonate Dead is right here. This is currently the 5-link. If you get the 6th link, Technology, you have 1.3 million damage, and that extra 270. So you're looking at about 1.5 million Shaper damage with Detonate Dead on a, pretty decent sort of setup and as a low life. I think it should be able to take out the rest of the endgame bosses, and I'll find that out in the next day or two and then post the results for you guys. Overall, I think Detonate Dead's been fairly smooth and fun. It probably isn't for everyone. A lot of people really don't like this setup and then cast sort of play style, or just the fact that you have to do more than one thing at once, and it looks kind of slow in that regard. However, it hasn't really felt slow to me. It's been pretty damn fun, and the visual on it, I think, is just fantastic. And then, as well as that, you can, by all means, replace Detonate Dead with some Cremation action, or some Volatile Dead action. I did try out Cremation. It just hasn't felt amazing for me, so this is roughly what it's going to look like. You spawn your corpses, and then you pop 3 volcanoes, and it doesn't feel good for clear because you have to wait for the actual balls to eventually hit something. And for single target, it might feel a bit better than Detonate Dead, but hasn't felt necessary, so I haven't done it. And Volatile Dead, obviously overpowered, so if you really want to play that, you certainly can, but I've been having fun with Detonate Dead. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope it was an informative video, and I'll see you next time.